That all seems a long way away under the autumn sun in Munich. Volkswagen wants to show its best side during an automotive show. But something is different. Something casts a cloud over the industrial powerhouse. Volkswagen's electric cars are selling poorly in China, the world's biggest car market. Once the biggest brand, VW is being dethroned by Chinese rivals, and one of them, BYD, has set up directly opposite them. An automotive duel on Munich's Grand Boulevard. Everything is on the line for VW. No other German company is so dependent upon China. Electric Chinese cars in the pole position is an existential threat for Volkswagen and inspiration for China's car makers.
We probably offer something a bit different than German manufacturers. In China, digital options are very important. I don't think they believed in electromobility at all. Volkswagen or GM, they were dominating. But what we see today is that Chinese car makers have over 60% of the market in electromobility.
Peter Nota, at the time BMW's head of customer brands and sales, inspects China's e-cars. German arrogance towards Chinese models was once legendary. But now, managers are thronging to see the Chinese and the proof of their own shortcomings. Wolfgang Porsche, automotive heir and owner of VW, is here with VW CEO Oliver Blume.
We are still the strongest car maker in China. It's crucial that we now succeed in the transformation to electromobility.
If the Chinese say German cars are uncool, I'd rather buy a BYD, then VW will just get 20 or 30% of its profits from China. That would of course be a disaster for Wolfsburg.
In the large exhibition hall in Munich, an alarmed who's who of German business moves into place. The Chancellor alongside the car magnate. Chancellor Scholz rushes to Munich to support the German car industry. The Chinese offensive is already damaging on this side of the world. German profits aren't what they once were, and when profits wane, so do jobs.
The transformation of mobility is a big job, but it's a team effort. I've come here today as part of that team.
That team is fighting a worthy opponent. China's e-cars are cheap because Beijing subsidizes them. Germany could retaliate with punitive tariffs across Europe.
That's our China strategy. Create a level playing field and say if you protect your markets and provide subsidies, so will we. We demand equal opportunities for all and we won't be pushed off the playing field.
But would Germany dare? Would Europe risk engaging in a trade conflict with China? Suddenly, the automotive conference becomes something else. Greenpeace activists crash the party. Bodyguards swarm around Scholz. While the activists decry climate change, it may be more than just the climate that's changing. Maybe an entire industry. Maybe the German economic model.
Trade with China has long been a party. Former Chancellor Angela Merkel called Beijing a strategic partner. The principle? Germany supplied engineering, and China provided cheap goods. Trade with China was once highly profitable for Germany, but China has now caught up, and in some areas, even overtaken.
We've reached a point where the balance is shifting. Chinese imports are increasing, our Chinese exports decreasing. The balance is shifting towards China. This is when we, as Germans, have to ask ourselves, is this what we want?
The German business model is over.
What do you see as the cause?
Well, it's because we import cheap products from China, cheap gas from Russia, do business all over the world, and the Americans pay for our security. That's over now.
Corona and Russia's war against Ukraine have shown just how dependent Germany is on global supply chains. But it's even more dependent on China than Russia. What lessons has Robert Habeck, Germany's economy minister, learned about global trade.
We had a 55% gas dependency, and we managed to keep the national economy running. 90%, and it wouldn't have been possible. 90% would have pulled the rug out from underneath us.
90%. That's how dependent Germany is on China for certain medicines and raw materials.
If it comes to a conflict with Taiwan, ties between Germany and China will change overnight.
A war of aggression would result in sanctions against China. The world's most important trade route would be cut.
Between 1/3 and half of all global goods are shipped through the Taiwan Strait. None of that would arrive. We'd have supply shortages and face mass unemployment.
The German government has created a new China strategy. The goal is de-risking. Less risk around China, less naivety. But what does that mean? How would it work? China wants to make others dependent on them while remaining autonomous themselves. De-risking in China even has its own name, dual circulation. To prepare itself for a trade war, China wants to boost domestic consumption and reduce its own dependence upon exports.
But German corporations are risking even more. Investments into China continue to grow.
I believe that there are still some in the economy saying we just want to increase profits with China, but they're not also trying to minimize risks.
Volkswagen wants to stay in the race and has invested 2.4 billion euros into a project with Horizon Robotics. The Chinese are the market leaders in self-driving cars.
We want to offer the customer the best. We're just using the best local solutions.
It's expensive. VW hopes its Chinese strategy will run as predictably as many of its cars.
We'll have to replace the Chinese market eventually because our companies will no longer play the role they have for the last 20 years.
Victor Gao, Vice President of the Center for China and Globalization, an unofficial mouthpiece of the Communist Party, agrees to be interviewed.
China has absolute dominance in rare earth and rare metals, and under China's sleeves, there are more than 24 cards to play. China has no problem with Germany, for example, but if Germany joins the US-imposed unjustified sanctions against China, then export to Germany will be under the same review as the Chinese government has announced as far as GA and GE.
Germany also used to produce gallium on its own, here in Stade near Hamburg. But only until 2016. Stade's gallium then became too expensive.
There's the political question. Is the production of gallium in Germany worth the effort? To ensure supply, to ensure competitiveness.
For the semiconductor industry, those questions seem to have been answered.
Eyes auf die Zukunft!
In March 2023, both the President of the European Commission and the German Chancellor broke ground on a new semiconductor factory for Infineon in Dresden.
Semiconductors are often referred to as the oil of the 21st century, the one raw material, so to speak, on which almost everything else depends.
By 2030, we want, working together with industry, to double Europe's share of the worldwide semiconductor production up to 20%. Since the semiconductor market is developing so rapidly, that means that we need to quadruple our current capacity.
The EU has provided 43 billion euros for semiconductor subsidies. That also makes Dresden attractive to TSMC. Semiconductor companies would be foolish to ignore such generous public investment. Germany is at least trying to become more autonomous. But Chinese high-tech has long stood at the center of German communications, operating German mobile networks and critical infrastructure. Can that be de-risked too?
Maybe that's the error in our de-risking, because we act like the motivation is peaceful. We just need to de-risk some, minimize the risk some, diversify some, as if the Chinese leadership wouldn't notice, as if they aren't interested in the exact opposite. China doesn't want to be de-risked.
First of all, if German government wants to shoot its own feet, be my guest. We cannot stop you from doing the stupid things which will inflict all the damage and injury and losses to the German people. I just personally hope the German government will be smarter and wiser, as I always believe.
Black swans supposedly stand for China's resilience. According to superstition and Huawei's company history, the birds symbolize an unforeseeable event with serious consequences. Huawei says the misfortune and threats they've faced have made them even stronger. It's why the black swans are fed and lovingly cared for on the company campus. The animals are supposed to continually remind the staff to be ever vigilant. The future is possibly as unimaginable as Huawei's corporate campus, where the Heidelberg Castle, Oxford University, and palaces from Bologna and Granada have all been reconstructed according to the wishes of Huawei's founder. A tribute to Europe's inventiveness, China's megatech company is researching and developing behind these facades. The US has long since outlawed Huawei components. Banning Chinese technology in Germany could have a cooling effect throughout Europe.
We do not want to lose any country as a customer, especially the biggest market in Europe, the German market. So if you can survive and excel in the German market, it means you can survive and excel in many other markets.
German telephone companies are also concerned about possible restrictions, threatening to sue Berlin for damages. They're naively ignoring the security concerns.